A student will never feel safe and secure and be able to really learn if there is that fear.
A few weeks after losing a classmate, students at East High told adults tonight they need to listen. Luis Garcia was shot near campus last month, and the 16-year-old passed away a few weeks later.
Today, students from East hosted a gun violence summit. 9 News reporter Kelly Rinke is live outside the Performing Arts Center tonight. Kelly, the students really wanted to talk about real solutions.
Yeah, guys, they want to know what can happen now to make them feel safer at school. So they brought together this group of adults who not only had the knowledge, but also the ability to make that happen.
Would anybody else?
Denver's future led the discussion. East High School students asked questions about gun violence to a table of leaders, hoping the adults can find ways to make them feel safe on campus.
We want to know your opinions on background checks.
A week after their classmate, Luis Garcia, died, kids want to focus on solutions.
I just wanted to say that we thank you all for being here, but we shouldn't have to be here.
To DPS leaders, elected officials, researchers, they asked what can be done to stop students from bringing guns to school.
A car is never a safe place to store a gun. If you're going to store it in your home, store it in a very safe, secure place. I'll give you a gun lock.
What are they doing in terms of securing those firearms? Not enough is what I'm saying, because clearly we've confiscated enough from our students from those guardians.
The school district superintendent says there have been 31 incidents involving guns on or near campus. He believes the problem isn't what's happening inside the hallways.
And a good portion of those as well confiscated have come from, I guess, the black market, the illegal market.
A room of concerned parents, kids, and teachers submitted more than 150 questions. Some want to know if there should be more police at school.
There's not a clear benefit. I know that sounds counterintuitive.
We have a conversation on Friday. We had to come back to school on Monday. What's going to happen on Monday? How do we feel better about the place we walk into?
Whether we invest in more law enforcement, security, or SROs in our schools, we also need to make sure that we're investing in our young people.
A panel had different ideas about how to prevent another tragedy. All agree every child should make it home.
We shouldn't be here. It shouldn't have taken a tragedy.
Another idea was investing in the social and emotional development of kids. Luis Garcia's brother Santos was here tonight in honor of his brother. He said he understands that this is a complex issue addressing gun violence, but he was not very satisfied with the conversations tonight, Kyle. He felt it was just words and no real actions were promised.
Wow. Santos has been such a voice for his brother, his family, and his brother's classmates through all of this, through his grief.
Yeah, and he's so young too. He's in his teens as well, and he's standing beside all of these students who have really mobilized after this tragedy. Not only setting up this summit, but they had the walkout to the state house last week, as well as speaking in front of city council members. They are really pushing this messaging out there.
Kelly Rinke reporting. Thank you, Kelly. The man who spent weeks on the run after allegedly killing 4 people in Aurora last fall will be extradited to Colorado. Joseph Castorino was arrested in Mexico in early December. He's accused of killing 3 of his ex-girlfriend family members and their neighbor last October. Court records show the family had asked for protection orders against Castorino the week before they were killed. Castorino's brother and cousin were both arrested, accused of helping him get away after the shooting. Castorino is currently in jail in Arizona. Law enforcement from Colorado has 30 days to pick him up. Earlier this week, prosecutors filed new charges, accusing him of stealing money and credit cards from 2 of the victims in the weeks before they were killed.
You could see smoke even miles away after a barn fire in Mead this morning. The barn was full of hay, which is why it kicked up so much smoke. Thankfully, the wind did not make it worse. That fire was contained to just the building. But there was a red flag warning along the I-25 corridor throughout most of the day. And while it will be warmer in the Denver area tomorrow, heavy snow is making its way back into the high country. Danielle will be here a little bit later in the show to talk about that next snowstorm and its timing.
3 schools in Denver will be closing down at the end of the year. The school district says that declining enrollment was too big of a problem.
Getting to this decision day was a long and painful process for the families, the staff, and the decision makers. Denver's school board first voted on this issue back in November this year. The superintendent started with a list of 10 schools recommended for closure. That got whittled down to 5, then whittled down to 2. Ultimately, the board said hard no and told the superintendent to try again and involve the community next time. Fast forward to this week, 3 schools were on the recommended closure list: Fairview Elementary, Math and Science Leadership Academy, and Denver Discovery. And through some tears and a lot of emotional moments, the board said reluctantly, okay.
Now that the vote is done, 3 Denver communities know these final months of the semester will be their last at their current schools. Families at Fairview, MSLA, and Denver Discovery will all transition to new schools.
Really, this is unfair.
While devastating for many families and staff.
There was some relief. You know, this ordeal is finally over for us.
Joe Ball is a second-grade teacher at Math and Science Leadership Academy.
And I use that word ordeal because that's how it's felt this year. It's felt like kind of like a roller coaster. You know, we've heard many different things. At certain times, we've been told we're closing. Other times, we were told we secured funding for next year and would be open. So for a lot of the teachers, it was partially a relief just to have an answer now, to finally know what's happening.
The teachers union made a deal with the district to ensure all teachers at closing schools will be guaranteed a job in the district next year. Joe plans to follow many of his students down the street to Valverde, but says plenty of others are now weighing their options.
A lot of the immediate concern was just kind of who's going to be left, who's staying. And I know several of the teachers have taken interviews with other schools. They've taken days off so that they can do those interviews. I know 2 teachers that are seriously considering leaving the profession.
So the board voted on these 3 schools today, but the superintendent has a longer list, 12 more schools they'll have to start talking about and making some hard decisions for next school year.
It's going to be terrible for the consumers, it's going to be terrible for the workers, and it's going to be devastating to the communities.
Employees at King Soopers are worried about the merger between Albertsons and Kroger. Colorado's Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser heard from Coloradans tonight about the merger's potential impacts. Weiser's part of a multi-state effort that's investigating the merger. Concerns would be increased food prices, store closures, and layoffs. The leaders of the 2 companies have defended the $25 billion deal. They say it'll help them compete with Walmart and online retailers.
A new report from Colorado Coalition for the Homeless says Denver's approach to the city's homelessness problem is not working. The coalition says criminalizing homelessness, like camping bans and treatment-first approaches, are ineffective. The organization says the solution should be a housing-first approach. That's when people who are experiencing homelessness are stably housed first, making it easier for them to then deal with mental or physical health issues in employment.
It costs much more to leave somebody out on the streets, interacting with the criminal justice system, in and out of shelter, in and out of emergency rooms, than it does to house somebody with supportive services.
The coalition says it can provide supportive housing and services for about $13,000 annually for an individual experiencing homelessness. The organization says taxpayers spend more than double that for emergency services like incarceration, detox treatment, and shelter services.
Colorado's Democratic legislators in Washington, D.C. and at the state level are working on bills to protect reproductive rights. Democrats at the state level introduced a new package of bills today. The first extends legal protections to providers and people who seek abortion or gender-affirming treatment in Colorado. It also prevents Colorado from recognizing investigations or lawsuits that come out of other states or insurance providers. Another measure would increase insurance coverage for abortions and other reproductive care. And the last bill would set restrictions on how anti-abortion centers can advertise their services. Republicans have called those bills extreme. Colorado's 2 Democratic senators in Washington joined colleagues to reintroduce a bill to codify abortion rights nationwide. They reintroduced the Women's Health Protection Act. It would prohibit states from restricting abortion. Since the Supreme Court overturned Roe, 14 states have implemented near-total abortion bans. The bill would establish federal rights for patients as well as protections for providers. Democrats have a majority in the Senate, but that bill is not likely to pass the House, where Republicans are in charge. Frustration over high utility bills is not just coming from customers these days. Now it's being heard from one of the commissioners who regulates Xcel Energy. Eric Blank is the chair of the Public Utilities Commission. He floated the idea of having utility companies pay at least 5% of the cost when they're forced to buy expensive energy. Right now, companies like Xcel directly pass along the full cost to the customer. So like during the winter storm of February 2021, Xcel was forced to buy really expensive gas, about $500 million worth. And that bill is still being paid off by customers through January 2025.
When customers win, the utilities win, and when customers lose, the utilities lose. And it can be small, but I don't think it should continue to be zero.
Blank's idea to have utility companies share some of that risk, That went nowhere today. The discussion was tabled. Public Utilities Commission will bring it up again in 2 weeks.
An international art looting scandal makes its way into Denver.
Plus, we're tracking another storm. Scattered showers rolling in just in time for the weekend. We'll chat about it up next.
A city is offering cash to rip up your lawn.